Welcome to the OPSQC Podcast, helping entrepreneurs, innovators, and small business owners scale to profitability. The goal of this podcast is to showcase real businesses, real owners, tell their stories, learn a little, and have some fun while doing it. Today on episode 6, I have the privilege of interviewing Louie Sharp, who is the founder of The Gifted Leader and Sharp Auto Body. Louie is a career Marine veteran. He served 20 years, created some businesses, and then had to go to Desert Storm, come back, and restart those businesses. He's an extremely passionate person. He's a great motivational speaker. I really think you're going to enjoy this podcast. There's a lot of great nuggets of information and takeaways. Without further ado, I introduce to you Louie Sharp. I did want to start out by thanking you for your service to the country. I think it's really important to recognize veterans and the things that they've done, and being that you're a career military, I wanted to get that out there and say thank you for everyone around us too.
Well, I really appreciate that, and it means a lot, even after the fact. So thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So to get this kicked off and started, do you want to give the listeners a little bit of background about Gifted Leader Enterprise and your body shop and the businesses that you have?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I started Sharp Auto Body actually when I was 23 years old, and it's still going strong. I've lived the American dream. I started with $500 in my toolbox, and I was tired of working for guys that were alcoholics. And people may wonder, well, how did I start a business and be in the Marines? So I did 4.5 years of active duty right out of high school. And then what I did was I started as an apprentice in a body shop, but I stayed in the reserves. And then we were activated for Desert Storm for 14 months. So I went and did that and then came back. And that was a unique experience in itself because I had to start Sharp Auto Body almost back up from scratch after being gone for 14 months.
Sure.
But that's what really motivated me initially was I was sitting in a meeting, the body shop owner, now this is 1981, and the body shop owner says, I want to make $50,000 more for me this year, but I can't afford to give anybody a raise. And I stood up in this meeting, there's probably 15 people, 15 employees. I stand up in this meeting and said, I'd like my paycheck, I'm done. And everybody else looked at me like I was a nut. And they said, what are you doing? I said, did you hear what he just said? He just told us loud and clear he wants us to work harder and faster for him, and there's no reward or gain in it for us. And that was all the motivation I needed to say, I could go do this on my own. And so that was what started Sharp Auto Body.
That's a great impetus. I mean, talk about, dichotomies in leadership. I mean, because you're totally on the other side of the spectrum. So to have a guy stand up and say that to you, just blatantly say, hey, I'm going to work you harder. You're going to make me more money, but I'm not going to pay you more. That's like a huge slap in the face, right? I mean, but kudos to you for recognizing that and taking that and turning that into an opportunity.
Yeah. And it's funny because sometimes, and I was angry about it, right? So, but I turned that anger into something positive, instead of staying there and complaining to everybody. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, but instead of staying there and complaining, I just said, I'm going to go do something different. I'm out of here. And it's funny because in the Marines, we had two really driving factors, right? Accomplish the mission and take care of the troops. And so when I went through that process with him, I thought, he doesn't care about the troops at all.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Right? Yeah.
Right.
I mean, greatest asset, and he doesn't care about them.
Right. That's exactly right. And so then, the leadership speaking business consulting thing, mm-hmm. It wasn't anything I set out to do. It was one of those things that kind of just birthed itself naturally from the things I was doing, right? I had been speaking to organizations for years about, like, to the driver's ed classes around the body shop stuff, what to do at the scene of an accident. I wrote a book called Car Sense that's still out there on Amazon, and it tells you, and it's about how to save money in every aspect of your car, buying your car, selling your car, mechanical repairs, collision repair, insurance, all that stuff. And so I was talking to groups long before I ever realized that there was professional speakers, right? It was just, seriously, it was just my way of giving back to the community. You know, It was just me wanting to help people because they don't know what they don't know. And you know this as well, right? We're kindred spirits because we love to go in and help people because they just don't know what they don't know. And once they know it, it becomes very powerful. So the speaking business kind of morphed, and I've been an avid and curious learner all my life. And I don't have a college degree, but I probably have a couple of master's degrees in all the stuff that I've been studying and the courses and the seminars, right? And so, because one of the things I love to ask people is, how much is in your budget this year for your personal development?
Right.
And most people look at you like you're an alien, because that's right. It's the nice for the audience that can't see. Jared just held up the proverbial goose egg. Right, they've got nothing in that budget for their own personal growth and learning. And I love to learn, and I'm fascinated by the things that other people have learned the hard way, and we can get there much faster by simply learning it the way they did it.
So you got your degree from the School of Hard Knocks in the Marine Corps, right?
That's right. That's exactly. Well, and that's very true, because when I started Sharp Auto Body, I didn't know anything about anything. I mean, I was still wet behind the ears in terms of life. I knew nothing about business. I started Sharp Auto Body and ran Sharp Auto Body out of my personal checking account, because I didn't know about a business checking account. I didn't know about an accountant and an attorney and an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp. I didn't know how to read a financial statement. I didn't know the difference between I didn't even know what a P&L or a balance sheet were, let alone the difference between them.
Sure. That's what I love about you, Louie, is you dig in, you get your hands dirty. And going back to when you were starting Sharp Auto Body, right? So we understand the impetus why you started it, right? So you're a bootstrap entrepreneur. You started, this thing from there. What were the first things that happened? Like, what were the first kind of events and what were you thinking as you were doing that?
It was exciting, and I wasn't. This may sound funny to some people, but having been in the Marines, it wasn't scary to me. It was just another adventure, right? One of the things I've come to realize now, and I love to tell people or ask people the question, can you tell me one thing you've worried about that's killed you? And I'll have people like fold their arms and tilt their head and start thinking. And then I say, look, you've lived through it all.
You're here.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. You're here. And so for me, starting a business was just another adventure.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. And I had failures, and I've had some big business failures. I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've had bad deals go bad. I've had deals go good. Since then I've bought and sold companies. I've bought and sold real estate, but all those things, it's a learning experience, but I just look at it as life's an adventure. You get to have fun. And so when I broke out on my own, I was excited because I knew I could control the quality of that repair. Yes. And I also knew I could control the quality of the client's experience. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that's what's really critical.
Yeah. And I've gone on the web and I've looked at some of the reviews and everything. You've got stellar reviews for Sharp Auto Body. I love that. And just speaks to your passion for the quality and for helping your customers. So that's, you've got testimony out there that people can go look at that says, this guy means what he says. So you've got the verification, right? Your customers, as your business grew, that was the verification. So let me back up again to when you started. You're not afraid. You're fresh out of the Marine Corps. You've got this impetus, start the business. You've got your why. Anybody that you were bringing along with you in that journey, or was it just Louie kind of driving this whole thing?
So that's a great question and really, really interesting. So I started in a one-car garage with no heat and no running water.
Awesome.
Yeah. And literally it was a one-car garage, and that's what all it was, 4 walls. And I was renting it for $100 a month. And I moved up to a 2-car garage that had a bathroom and had a heater and a furnace and all that good stuff. And a childhood buddy of mine came to me, and he'd gotten laid off at a factory.
Okay.
And he said he was looking for a job. And so I brought him on, and this is going to be tough. I might choke up on you, but I brought him on and I taught him the trade.
Okay.
And I can remember the first time I had him paint a car, and he was scared to death.
Sure.
But I had him paint the roof of a white Chevy.
Okay.
And so it's tough to run the paint on a flat panel, right? It's easy to run the paint on the side of a car, tough to run on a flat, because I wanted to build his confidence, right?
Yep. That
man currently runs my paint department and has been with me for almost 40 years. And when I hired him, I realized the potential, and I wasn't completely aware of it at the time, Jared, but it's become very clear to me now that anybody that's done anything great has done it with a team, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the people that puffed their chest out and said I, they don't do jack. It's the people that understand. And you said this before, our greatest asset, our biggest value we have in any company are the people in the company.
Absolutely. And that's a great story. Taking somebody, especially as a childhood buddy, right? And, that kind of that moment you freeze and you're like, I'm not sure if I can do this, but you supported, you mentored him, coached him to be able to do it well. And then that's turned into something just, magnitudes more than what you were probably thinking in the beginning is what it sounds like. Right. And definitely, that statement is really powerful. I look back at different things like movies about Steve Jobs or, all these things published about Elon Musk, and they talk about how great of people they are. And don't get me wrong. They're visionaries and they're very great people, but I think you hit it on the head. They have a team behind them. And these people have names, and these people are creators and implementers of those visions that they had. So it's not them doing it alone, right? They've got people, great people behind them.
Without a doubt. And one of the things that I challenge business owners when I go into a business and consult, one of the things I ask them to get a great feel for that. And I learned that there's a great book out there called 11 Rings by Phil Jackson. I highly recommend it to anybody that's a leader. But one of the things that he did, and one of the things I ask business owners now is, can you go out today, or could you go to Amazon today and buy a specific book for each one of your employees, for their interest, for their needs, for their goals, that's in alignment with who they are and what they want to be doing in their life? And again, I get that deer in headlights, like, what are you talking about? And I know right in that moment how disconnected they are from their team.
Absolutely. That's a great one. You brought that up before, and that's something I wrote down during one of our first meetings that you brought up about the 11 Rings, how he handed out books to each one of his players on a very personal basis, showing one, he knows them, he knows their interest, and he cares about them. He cares about their personal development. People think about employee engagement. They kind of overcomplicate it a lot of times, right? It's really simple. I think guys like us get it. It's really simple. You get to know people, you relate to them, you're sincere, you care about them because they're people who are in the journey with you. And a lot of leaders, I think that's something missing. What's your thought on that?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Jared. So I'm in the middle of writing my next book, and it's called Leadership and Love. And people are all over the board in this thing called leadership and team engagement. But there's really, at the end of the day, people want just a couple of simple things. They want to be heard. They want to know that their voice matters. They want to be appreciated. And ultimately they want to be loved. And I'm not talking about the romantic Hollywood stuff. I'm talking about, to your point, that you care about them, that you know about them. I don't hang out with my employees. That's not my intention. And that gets a little blurry because then there's you're favoring somebody or you like somebody more than somebody else. But I can tell you, I have very intimate personal relationships with each one of them. And I've built it. And you are a great example of why I always love to connect with amazing people. I have often over the years helped my employees with a mortgage for their house by connecting them to somebody in my network. Right now, I've got a young man I'm mentoring. He wants to learn the trade, and I've been helping mentor him. his mom, he was having some troubles. And here's something really powerful. And this is a great story. And I'm also growing a manager for the body shop.
Okay.
Who's an amazing female. And there's amazing female leaders in the world. And I think a lot of men are still discrediting women as amazing leaders. And so I had this meeting with the three of them. And so she was like, she wanted to go right after, do you need more training? You're messing some stuff up. I said, whoa. I said, Mike, what's going on in your personal life? And he gets tears in his eyes. Mm-hmm. And he says, my mom's in a really hard place. She's going to lose her house and she's got no place to live.
Wow.
I said,
affect your work.
Without a doubt. And he was bringing it to work, right? And his head wasn't in the game. I said, okay, is there anything else? He said, no, that's the biggest thing on my mind. I love my mom. His dad hasn't been in his life for a long time. And he's like in his early 20s. Mm-hmm. That day I get on the phone, call a realtor of mine, and I go, now I know lots of realtors, but I called a realtor who's like you. And she's on top of her game. She knows how to connect things. She knows how to make things happen. And by that weekend, I had his mom in a house. And I shouldn't say it was the team, right? My network of people had his mother in a house. Now that's an employee that's now engaged to Sharp Auto Body. And as a matter of fact, last night, we have somebody that's really in a crunch for a car. The vendor messed up the bumper delivery. Mm-hmm. I asked him at 4:00 in the afternoon if he would drive from where we're at to Orland Park in rush hour traffic, hour and a half one way, and an hour and a half back. He's with a smile on his face. He said, Louie, I'd be happy to. Tell me where I'm going.
I really hope people are listening to this, because what you're talking about here is at the crux of what we're trying to instill, especially during this time of COVID. I mean, leaders, I'm always amazed. There's so many leaders who just don't understand employee engagement. You are just boiling it down to, it's really simple. It's about caring, right? It's not that you have to be that love. Like you said, it's not romantic love. It's a love and caring for your people and the things that you do for your employees. I mean, going out way above and beyond, using your network to do that. That speaks to the heart of who you are, Louie. And I know you, and I know you're altruistic, you're hungry and you're humble. That's how we met, was through the whole SIL event, which is, those are the values. And, Chris and Michael do a great job of that organization. I'm so indebted to them to connecting me with people like you. But when you get to the heart of being a good leader, this piece of the compassion or emotional quotient, right? I've had this discussion with a couple other people as well, that in order to be a good leader, you have to have a level of compassion. You have to have a level of caring. That's not something people really can be taught. It's something maybe you grow into personally because of your own personal journey, but it's something that's really, really difficult to teach people. And you're living that example. I mean, those two examples you just put up are really, really great, because now you've got loyal employees, right? That's what you really want. And people come to work. Yeah, it's about getting a paycheck and getting paid, but there's so much more to it. People are only about half engaged at that point. And you're bringing it to a whole nother level, that whole other level of engagement, because you know what? The company I work for cares about me. People know me. I'm contributing. I'm making a mark. That's what the employees really want, right?
Without a doubt. And it's a funny thing because, Jared, first off, I'd like to make 2 points. One of them is, why grow your network if you're not going to pile that network into your employees to help them too, right? Yeah. And the other thing is guess who's become a powerful referral source for us?
Exactly.
His mother. Yeah. His mother's telling everybody in the world, if you wreck your car, you got to get the Sharp Auto Body. Yeah. And that thought had never crossed my mind, right? Yeah. And the point I want to make to this is, one of the things that I don't know a lot about life, but the things I know, I bet my life on. And one of them is anything that you want in life, get busy giving it. You want respect, get busy giving respect. You want compassion, get busy giving compassion. You want support and help, get busy giving support and help, because it'll come back to you in spades.
Louie, that's powerful stuff. And this is why I wanted to have this conversation. This stuff right here, this is the nitty gritty. I love this. to take a little bit of a turn though and back up. So there's one thing I wrote down I wanted to get back to. So you said you started this auto body shop, then you had to go to the reserves, and you spent 4 years in the reserves, and you then had to come back and restart your business. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that experience was like? And what do you really mean you had to restart? I mean, obviously the business was still there, but why do you make that statement?
So what I did was I had a couple. So Mutz, my painter, who's still with me 40 years on, actually it's 39 years. Well, it'll be 40 years in May to be accurate. But
okay.
What I did was I left Sharp Auto Body in the hands of a body man who was working for me at the time. And I basically kind of gave him the business. I gave him $25,000 of seed money.
Okay.
And basically I made him a tenant and said, all you have to do is pay me. And I forget what it was in rent, $2,000 a month or something. You just pay me rent. Sharp Auto Body is yours.
Okay.
All the money you make, it's your money to make.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought it was a good deal.
Yeah.
And so instead of taking advantage of the opportunity, he did just the opposite. So when I literally, we flew back in the middle of the night, no big parades, no celebrations, long after Desert Storm was over. And the next day, I had like 24 hours, and I got up the next morning and I went to work. Mm-hmm. And so, and so one of the first things I did was I went to the post office because I'd gotten a post office box. I went to the post office to get my mail, and I'm coming out of the post office, and a longtime client lady she's headed into the post office, and she just starts chewing me out. She starts chewing me out for a poor repair on a van that was fixed while I was gone.
Yeah.
So I stand there and humbly take it. And I apologized and said, I'm going to make it right. And so as I got into it, there was actually 3 vehicles that I completely stripped and repainted for free to do the right thing. And in those days, it's different than it was now. But I went back to the bank, and on my signature, I got $35,000 because the seed money I had left for him, he had just squandered it away.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so the business was broke. I went to the bank. I borrowed $35,000. And again, on my signature, because I had a reputation and relationships with people at the bank, and literally started it all up again. And in that, oddly enough, in that stretch, Mutz, the painter, saw what he was doing. So he left and he went and started driving a concrete truck. And so one of the things that I had to do was I had to go back and sell Mutz on the idea that he should come back to the body shop because that concrete thing was seasonal and it's dirty work and blah, 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 blah. So there was a lot of moving parts to get it all back up and running again.
Right. No, that's incredible. I mean, you gave this person an opportunity. They blew it, right? And you weren't, I mean, yeah, maybe you were mad about it, especially getting chewed out by a customer because your reputation, your name's on it, right?
Right.
But you then got to work. You then started, as you said, one of your favorite sayings I love you say is you did your push-ups, right?
Right. Yeah, you can't hire other people to do your push-ups for you. Yep.
And that's awesome. So you sold Mutz on the idea. He came back, obviously, and he's working with you now. And that's a great story. What's your big takeaway? Like if you had to go back and rewind the clock and look at how you'd approach that, knowing what you know now, how would you have done things differently?
Well, that's a great question. That's a great question. I don't know really. I have to give that some serious thought because I think, we at that point we were a 3-man operation. So and it's weird because I had like 30 days. So I had some investment property, some rental income, and I had my personal life, the business, these other investments, that I had to take care of. And I literally had 30 days and in that 30 days, I had to start reporting to Glenview Naval Air Station, right? So it was a hectic 30 days. I don't know. The only other option would have been to flat out close it.
Okay.
That I can think of, just close the doors and say, gone to war, be back soon or something. And it's funny. So this is reminding me of another thing that I like to share with you. Okay. Most people don't ever ask, right? They're afraid to ask because their ego won't let them. So I remember I came back. Now the same guy's been cutting my hair since I was in the 6th grade.
Wow.
He's still alive and he's still cutting my hair, and he's a dear friend of mine. But I remember coming back from Desert Storm, and again, I've been gone from my business for 14 months. Mm-hmm. It's in a shambles. I'm working for free. I've borrowed money to start back up again. I'm sitting in the barber chair, and he said, "Hey, Louie, how's it going since you've been back?" I said, Chuck, it's not good. Things are tough, and it's slow, and I'm fixing a bunch of stuff that was messed up. Mm-hmm. And I said, "You got any ideas?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Rent one of those portable signs that you put in the letters on that you can make your own message." He said, "Run it out by the road." And he said, "Put back from Desert Storm, need your business." Powerful. I had that thing out there for about 60 days.
Yeah.
People talked about it for years.
No kidding.
And I got that business advice from my flipping barber, who still to this day runs his business without a fax machine, without a computer, without a cash register.
There's something to be said for people who they understand how people work, right? They understand the messaging, right? Because that's really what he brought to you. Is he's like, "Hey, here's the idea. Here's the message," right? And that may not have been a message you came up with your own. That's an incredible story. I love that story.
Yeah.
Looking at that whole thing too, right? Where you're talking about getting the ego out of the way. And that's a huge point that you brought up. Getting the ego out of the way. A lot of people are leaders starting their own business. I encounter this all the time. I know my business better than anybody. I don't need advice, right? That's the typical response you'll get from a lot of leaders. And that's something it takes time to work through typically with people. Do you have any tips on that? Do you have any kind of ways that you work through that with different people to get past the ego?
I do. It's a funny thing because you had asked me in an earlier conversation, what makes me different or unique? And what I like to share with people is, first off, as you well know, the hardest person to lead is ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
And so I'm sure, just like you, I go through a pretty extensive interview process because, again, if they're not willing to do the push-ups, I can give them just like you, we can go in and give them all the great advice or information or ideas or processes that they need to grow their business or turn their business around. But if they're not going to do it, it's not going to help. And one of the things, when I do presentations, I take a glass and I fill it up with Coca-Cola. Mm-hmm. Coca-Cola is toxic crap, right? No good for your body, no good for your brain, just jacks everything up.
Yep.
Well, that's us as leaders. And what I like to get people to understand, and what makes me unique, is I like to get rid of the crap before I try and put any good stuff in. Mm-hmm. Because you're just battling, it's like a tug of war. If you got the good and the bad, and you teach somebody like integrity or, this compassion like we've been talking about, but they've still got, so there's a bunch of C's that I try and get out of their leadership. One of them is criticism, right? It's often one of the things I share with people that want to really grow their company and their team is, I said, I want you to manage by wandering around. And what I want you to do is I want you to wander around the company. And I did a video on this even after COVID, because you can still do it virtually.
Yes. Yep.
I want you to wander around the company, and I want you to look for them doing things right. And I want you to appreciate them and praise them for what they're doing right. Don't wander around your company and say, hey, it's dirty around your work area, or, you left the lights on in the bathroom, or all the crazy stuff that business owners will complain about. What you want to do is let go of the criticizing, right? The other thing is let go of the complaining. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Please, I just had a conversation on this yesterday, so I'm interested to hear what you said.
Well, and so one of the things I share with people is let go of all the complaining, because there's two things that I've realized about complaining. The first one is we don't complain about things we can't control, right? Has anybody ever complained about gravity? Never, because we can't control it. Right. When the plane crashes, the headline doesn't say gravity kills 300, right? It doesn't. Right. And so we don't. And we've taken gravity to the other extreme, and every sport we play uses gravity. Think about it: golf, baseball, basketball, hockey, football, all needs gravity for us to play. But we don't complain about it. So we only complain about the things we have the power to change. Yeah. So shut up and get busy changing it. The other thing is stop complaining to people who can't do anything about it. Everybody knows somebody that they work with that complains about their spouse. And everybody knows somebody that comes home to their spouse and complains about work. Well, the people at home can't fix the people at work, and the people at work can't fix the people at home. Grow a backbone and go tell somebody, honey, I love you, but you're making me crazy with the dishes in the sink every night, right? And find a solution. But at some point, let go of that complaining, because it's not doing any good. And that complaining is also a form of gossip, right? So if you and I were in a work environment and I come over to you and I say, hey, Jared, I don't know who hired this Larry guy, but man, what a chucklehead. He's always late. He's the slowest person in the company. He's the weakest link, man. Now I wander over and start talking to Larry. What do you think I'm talking about? I'm telling him about how screwed up you are, because that's my MO, right? That's how I'm operating.
Yep. This is what I love about you, Louie. You're no BS. You eat your vegetables. You make people eat their vegetables. This is great stuff. But on that point of the walk on the floor, so I just had this conversation the other day too, and I think this is a great thing to elaborate on. I met a person who's been very successful in the automotive and seating industry. He's been in operations. He's one of those people who gets moved around to the hot spot or the pain point for the business. And he and I had about a half-hour conversation just about, okay, well, what processes would you recommend to improve an organization? And he's like, Jared, one of the things I do when I go to a new facility is I just walk the floor. 5 times a day, I walk the floor. And, we were talking about Gemba is what the Japanese call it, the Gemba walk, right? They go walk the floor. But I think you added another element to it that is really important to point out. And I'm pretty sure if I went back to that other person and asked them, they would say the same thing, which is constructive feedback, right? Because as a leader, if you're just going out and walking the floor, all you're really doing is you're educating yourself, which is great. That's a great first step. And I applaud people getting out of the office, walking the floor of their operation, understand what's going on. But the second element you cited is that employee engagement piece and constructive discussions or very positive conversations. Find people doing stuff right. Focus on that, because once people realize you're focused on what's going right, that tends to get momentum and builds on itself.
I agree. And it also opens up a thing that's very powerful called communication. Yeah. And as I can tell you, one of the things so I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to follow up with an email to thank you. And then I'm going to ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how did I do? And if it wasn't a 10, what could I do to make it a 10? If I was interviewed in the future, right? Because that's how you grow. I've asked my employees, hey, how are we as a company or myself as a leader, how are we doing on a scale of 1 to 10? And here's where you got to check the ego at the door, right? When they say, Louie, you're a 5, I say, okay. I check my ego at the door instead of saying stupid employees. They don't know what they're doing. They don't own a company. They have no idea. I leave all that stuff out of the equation. I ask them, okay, what would it take to make it a 5? And then they tell you some very powerful stuff, and it's often really simple. Mm-hmm. Well, Louie, there's always a shortage of toilet paper in the bathroom.
Right. Yeah.
No, but it's a big deal to them, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And now you're a 10. And the other part of that is that, so when that communication is going both ways, I can tell you, much like my barber who gave me the sign idea after Desert Storm, my greatest improvement, I had a shop meeting.
Yep.
We were having a problem with production. And I don't remember what it was now, but I got the whole team together, including the 2 office ladies. So currently we're running at 11 people. Mm-hmm. And I've got 2 ladies that run the office. And one of them's now the manager in training. But the ladies in the office had a brilliant idea on how to solve production's problem. Mm-hmm. And they don't work in production, but that's when you open it up and there's that communication and everybody feels like it's safe to say something or to give their input, then you get this kind of growth and problem solving that you'd never have, thinking you're living in this vacuum by yourself, wanting to be that guy that doesn't need help or thinks he knows it all.
Great point. We are so aligned on this stuff. It's scary. You brought up female employees and leaders and offering great tips twice now. So I want to look at this a little bit deeper. What do you think about women in leadership makes them uniquely positioned? Is there anything that makes them uniquely positioned to contribute at a different level than men do?
Oh, without a doubt. I think they're one of the most underutilized, underappreciated, under-maximized resources in the workforce, because I can tell you they come with compassion because it's in their genetic makeup, right?
DNA, yeah.
Right, in their DNA. They were born with this thing, and it's millions of years of evolution, right? They're born to be mothers. They know how to nurture. They know how to care. They know how to be compassionate and understanding. And yet they're so strong. They're such a great combination. You know, us men, I love one of the things I love about women is most of them are still very, very connected to their intuition, right? So I can tell you now, when I hire somebody, they go through a process, but I asked my 2 female teammates, I asked them, how did they make you feel? Mm-hmm. I don't care about what their skills were, where they were, or their experience. I asked those women, how did those people make you feel?
Yeah.
Louie, he gave me the creeps. Throw that resume away. And so women bring these unique skills, and most of them don't bring an ego. Men from really early on, and I've done a fair amount of reading and research about this. Mm-hmm. Us guys, really early on, we were taught, don't cry, suck it up, walk it off, be a man, don't be a baby, don't cry like a girl, right? Mm-hmm. And so then we developed this macho crap that's just that, macho crap. And so most men, and you can watch them in a room, they're busy wanting to be the biggest dog in the room. Right. Women don't come in from that place. Women come in from a place, now they can have drive and ambition, but they're really coming from a place of, okay, how do we do this? How can we put this together? And how can we take care of everybody while we're going after this thing? And that's why there's so many great leaders. I don't know if I'm going to draw a blank on her name, but there's a great resource out there. If people don't know, it's called Masterclass. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the lady that built spandex, the whole spandex brand, who's now a billionaire, started in her flipping home. No business experience, had an idea, and it's still possible. What I did, what she did, it's possible for anybody out there to just create an idea, start a business, and it literally starts out of thin air, out of your imagination. You bring it from the ether. For me, it's from God, right? The universe, infinite source. It's just these ideas. But women in that place are so powerful. And I can tell you that they're also so right now I'm in a 42-week leadership class, and I've been teaching leadership for years already. Mm-hmm. But I'm always learning. And one of the things he was talking about is how the women in the workforce is on such a rise, and that there's such a powerful asset. And in his example, he's got I think 20 people on his team. Only one of them is a man.
Interesting.
Yep.
Well, this is really interesting coming from a guy who's been in the Marines, right? Who, people talk about the toxic masculinity and everything, right? And people probably envision like what that looks like. So here's a guy who's been in the Marines, career Marines, 20 years, right? Saying, hey, look at women for the value they bring, which is something totally different from what men can bring on so many levels. There's extreme value, and they they can do things that we just innately can't, right? Because they're programmed that way from their DNA. And, that's interesting, because I've actually gone through and I've seen, I think everybody's seen this rise, right, of recognizing the contribution that women bring. So I think this is a movement that's going to keep rolling. And I think it's extremely valuable. I do work with women business owners too. And I find that they're some of the most driving, innovative people I know, right? And to be honest, they are the ones that are really concerned with team dynamics, team development. Like you said, they're not like guys where, hey, I can do this on my own, because that's almost like how we've been programmed. But there's a lot of really great, fruitful nuggets you just had in that last 3 minutes that you espoused. I hope people rewind and actually listen to that in its entirety.
Well, and so I want to make a point here, because I'm living proof. So you brought up something. In the Marine Corps, you go through boot camp, and boot camp for the Marine Corps at the time was 3 months. And so if you went through the Marine Corps boot camp, you could go transfer to any other branch and you didn't need to go through boot camp. But in that 90 days, there were guys that were in my platoon that were hick farmers from Iowa that had never seen a black person. And there were drug dealers and pimps. And at the end of 90 days, and they said something very powerful. They said, nobody here is white, black, red, yellow. You're all now green. And when they shoot you, you're going to bleed red. Those are the only two colors you need to worry about. In that 90 days, they got all of us trained and brainwashed. They changed our mindset to where we would run through a door if they told us to run through that door, even if somebody was shooting at that door. Right. But here's what I want you to understand. I came out of that thing, that macho idiot. And I can tell you that's why I think the hardest thing for a leader to do is work on themselves and to get rid of the negative stuff. Because I started making quantum leaps in who I was as a person and who I was as a leader when I started getting rid of my ego crap. And when I started realizing, so I'll give you an example of how you can do the 180 swing.
Sure.
So my wife now makes fun of me. She hates ants in our house. And every now and then we get ants. At this point in my life, I don't kill anything because I've realized it doesn't heal, it doesn't help, it doesn't accomplish anything. And so I'll catch an ant in a Kleenex and I'll let it go outside. I'll catch a spider in a Kleenex and I'll let it go outside. And so now, and then that same 180-degree swing where I would kill anybody they told me to go kill. Now I don't kill anything. Right. And in that same swing, I'm not this. And it was really hard because, and again, I'm no different than you. I put my pants on one leg at a time today. But I can tell you that coming out of the Marine Corps, I rose up pretty quick in the ranks. And so in the Marine Corps, if I told somebody to do it, they did it. There wasn't, why are we doing it, Louie? Or I got a better idea. So I had to come from that guy, that type of leadership, that 20th century leadership where it was, male dominated, do as I say, my way or the highway, to swing the other way to be able to build teams and be compassionate. But that's all about us internally, right? That's not externally. And you know this too. We've both worked with business owners who complain about their flipping employees. And when I ask them, what's the common denominator? Well, they're all idiots. No, the common denominator is you. Right. You're the chucklehead leader that hasn't figured it out and broken the code, that you're the guy doing the same things over and over and over again because of your macho, egotistical crap that you need to get rid of.
I have to ask, have you said that directly to business owners, and what was the response?
Yeah. So you're right to the point, you don't
sugarcoat things. So.
I don't. And I can tell you that, you know what? I'm all about what's the best thing we can do to get us the fastest down the road towards our goal. Right. And so if you bring me on, I'm not your yes man. I'm the guy that's going to tell you, you need to get your face back in the dirt and do your push-ups. Well, this is a flipping push-up. Right. And I can tell you sometimes I try and catch them in the screening process. Right. Because most of these guys are stuck and you're not going to move them.
Right.
And we can't help those guys. But I've had a couple that have weeded through. And one guy, so this is very recent. One guy, I pulled him aside. I took him out back. Literally, I said, when you've got a couple of minutes, you and I need to go for a walk. And so I took him out back, and I said, I love you. I said, you've got a great heart. I said, you're growing your business at great breakneck speed. And I said, and that's why you've brought me in to help you with some of this. I said, but I'm going to tell you two things. I said, you have no respect for women. Your wife works for you, and your mother works for you. And I said, man to man, I said, you're about to blow up the two most important relationships in your life because you don't respect them. You treat them like crap. And I said, and those two employees would die for you. And I said, day in and day out, they keep coming in and busting their butt for you. And you continue to pick them apart about everything that's going wrong. I told them flat out. And I said, today's a come to Jesus meeting. Mm-hmm. I said, I love you. I said, but I can't help you if you don't realize. And I had a couple of conversations with him earlier. I had said to him, because I watched him how he treats men, mm-hmm. and he's got total respect for them. And so, yeah, I'm right in their face because, and I don't do it with the macho I'm right thing. I do it from a place of love. Look, these are people that can help you grow. I told him, I said, you could be retired in 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I mean, really, really, really impactfully retired, where you can have a big impact on the world because these women, and this is like we were talking about, these women are loyal, right? You get a woman on your team and you take good care of her, they are loyal. I can tell you the woman I'm making my manager, she is loyal. She, and I could go on, but the answer, that's a long answer to my answer is yes. I'm going to tell you the way it is because that's what you hired me for. And I'm doing you a disservice if I don't.
Right. I mean, yeah, women connect at a totally different level than men, like right away. That skill set's there. And I have to say, whatever that guy paid you, it wasn't enough. Because you probably saved him in so many different realms of his life and his career and his business. I mean, that's something not everybody has the toolkit to do. I mean, to like you're coming from, like you said, a place of caring and a place of compassion and love, and you're pulling them aside and you're being honest with them. Some people have problems with that.
Well, yeah. And I think the other part of it is, so you just touched on something that's really powerful, Jared. And I love you, man. And we could talk for hours. Oh, yeah. and it's amazing because one of the things, so, and here's what you do too, in that. So I've learned a lot about relationships and emotional intelligence, right? Mm-hmm. So at one point, now his wife, they're a mixed marriage. She has 2 children from a previous marriage, and they have 2 children together. Mm-hmm. And so one day he came in, and he was just in a nasty mood. And I said, hey, what's up with you? Mm-hmm. And he said, our 12-year-old, blah, 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 blah. And so I gave him some of those. I said, how much time do you really spend with her about her? Right. I said, all you're doing is beating on her. And so I said, do me a favor. I said, for the next 10 to 15 days, every night when you guys have dinner, I just want you to ask her about her day. Sure. How was school? How are her friends? Mm-hmm. He came back to me a week later and he said, Louie, it's like magic. Yeah. I said, it's not magic. I said, but now you're caring about her. Instead of being this guy that just walks in all the time, barks a bunch of orders and walks out, she now knows you're invested in her relationship. And right. So that's part of, as a leader, now I can take him out back, put my arm around his shoulders and say, look, you're screwing this up by the numbers. You couldn't be doing this any worse if I had trained you how to do it worse. Seriously, right? Yeah. But once you've got that emotional intelligence, and here's the power of walking around, right? Yep. So if I'm pouring into you, and this is the thing that I'll share this with you too. I want to make 2 points here. One of them is people don't, as leaders, we don't understand how valuable it is for us to pour into people and say, and be specific, right? Mm-hmm. Not false or fake. Hey, you look really great job today. Hey, I really appreciate the job you did on that door latch. It works great, and the client's going to be really happy. That's specific. And if you do enough of that, the emotional bank account, you pour into the emotional bank account. It's like your savings account in the bank. I can go to him and I can say, hey, look, you got to, as a matter of fact, I'm going to have to have a conversation with this guy that I praised him yesterday. Today, I'm going to have a conversation with him about he's being wasteful with our plastic gloves, our rubber gloves. But I've poured into him so much that I can't drain that account. Right. Well, what if I'm constantly hounding him, then I'm out of any space to teach him, to grow him, or to lead him.
I find that when I coach people in that regard, because they're trying to make up for lost time, I'm not sure what the mentality is, but when I tell people that they have to give sincere appreciation, the word sincere is kind of left out when they grab it, and they just start going around giving like appreciation to everybody for everything. Right. And it becomes at that point, it's like, people are kind of questioning the value or the sincerity of it. Right. So I think sincere, honest appreciation when it's deserved is key. And being a leader, like understanding when those times are, right, to do that. It's not something you just walk around just sprinkling all over everybody all the time, 110% of the time, because then people it kind of dilutes the value of it. Right. I mean, there's got to be a little bit of a holdback to say, yeah, this is a meaningful discussion, or there's a meaningful issue we had in our business. And yeah, I'm going to recognize this person for that, right? For that value they're adding. There's got to be a place of sincerity and honesty in that discussion.
I agree with that. And I'll share a quick story with you. And this is where life is just a big library, yes. Right? And as long as you've got your eyes and your ears open, you can learn from I mentor high school kids, and those kids teach me more than adults do on a regular occasion. But I was in Cleveland, Ohio, and I was going to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I play guitar. I've been in bands my whole life. I still in bands. I'm going to play guitar till the day I die. And so my wife and I are in the lounge in the hotel, and there's this 80-some-year-old black guy playing the piano. Okay. And this dude could play everything and anything: blues, classical, show tunes, jazz, rock and roll, country and western. Just awesome. So I asked the waitress, I said, can I buy him a drink when he takes a break? She says, well, at his age, he doesn't drink anymore, but you can buy him a cup of coffee. So he comes over and we just break into this great conversation, right? And I'm just pouring love on him. And I'm saying, hey, you're just amazing. I love your playing. Mm-hmm. And at some point he says this to me. He says, music from the heart touches the heart.
I like that.
And I've morphed it into anything from your heart touches the heart. And I wanted to share that story, Jared, because you're absolutely right. All the things that I've ever said to you and all the things you've ever said to me have come from your heart. So you haven't flattered me just to flatter me. When I tell you we're kindred spirits, you feel that. I feel that connection to you. And at that point, right now, the hair on the back of my neck is standing up because you know it. You can feel it. And people feel you long before you ever open your mouth. People feel you long before you ever make an action. And when that praise or that appreciation comes from your heart, it can't be too much because it's sincere and people will feel it. And you're right. People will go to the other side of that, right? And then it becomes that gooey, oh my God, it's sickening, right? Yeah. Don't ever when you come from your heart, it will touch their heart every time. And when it's that, and I love, you use some very powerful words. When it's sincere, when it's authentic, when it's genuine, you will never fail. You will never fail with your appreciation. You will never fail as a leader. So I can tell you, this chokes me up. I sat down with my team at COVID and said, I don't know what the hell's going to go on. We've never been here. I don't know what's going to go. We're in the car industry and people are going to stop driving. Mm-hmm. And we had a conversation. But in that moment, I was transparent. I was sincere. I was authentic, and I was genuine.
Absolutely.
And guess what? Everybody that I went into that thing with, I came out with.
And so many leaders were afraid to have that conversation because they viewed it as a form of weakness. To be honest, I've talked to other people. I'm like, have you talked to your organization about what's going on, about what you guys are dealing with? No, because then they'll think the leadership team, we don't know what we're doing. Nobody thinks you guys are perfect, gods on the hill. They know that you got to work through things, but they want visibility. They want to understand what the position is. They want to see where they can help. And I think that, like you said, the ego is such a big blockage to many companies and leaders. And if you can get past that, there's a whole slew of conversations and things that can occur and take place that are going to improve the business.
And so you asked me a question before, and I'm not sure that I gave you a clear answer, but I'll give it to you now. And so how do you cure this ego thing?
Yeah.
You ask yourself a simple question. Are you coming from fear or are you coming from love?
That's a great one. Yeah.
If you're coming from fear, you're in your ego. If you're coming from love, you're not afraid of anything, and there's nothing wrong with being transparent. And here's something people don't understand. I call it peeing in the pool. In the last political scene, it's really important to this energy and feeling and what's coming from your heart, right? I don't care whether you were hating one of the presidential candidates or you hate broccoli. Mm-hmm. When you're hating, you're peeing in the collective pool. Yep. So when you walk into your business and you're afraid to tell people something, or you're afraid of what might happen, or your employees are just like dogs and children. When I mentor young girls, I tell them, look, when you start dating a guy, he's a heat-seeking missile. He's got one thing on his brain, right? You want to get them in front of a dog and a little kid as soon as possible, because that dog and that little kid's going to tell you good guy or bad guy.
Absolutely.
Well, the same thing with it's the truth. And the same
of a 14-year-old daughter. I love that.
You give her that advice. And the other piece of it is your employees are no different, right? And how many business owners, and you've seen them too, they'll walk around and they're just in a bad mood, and they won't say. Their employees can read your body language. Your employees can feel your mood. You're just peeing in the pool, and then you wonder why production's down. You're peeing in the pool and wonder why communication isn't working. This isn't rocket science, boys and girls. It's basics. But are you coming from a place of fear, or are you coming from love? It's really that simple.
That is a great perspective, and that's a great question that people can use daily to just understand where they're at as a leader. I got to rewind here though. Okay. Looking at you transitioning from being a Marine, a auto body shop owner, and now you're going to get into this world of leadership consulting, leadership management, education. How did that occur? I mean, was this like an event that something happened that just kind of put Louie in that position? Because I mean, you spoke at some very big companies like DuPont, companies like that. How did you make that transition?
So that's a great story and a great question. I signed up for a Jack Canfield event called Train the Trainer. And again, I
soul, right?
Yeah. And I'm on my journey. I'm always learning. And at this one day event, he was taking applications from literally people around the world to be in this program for a year-long program. Mm-hmm. And to make a long story short, I was selected, but only because I was a veteran. I was one of two veterans that he took into the program. Mm-hmm. And so what happened, it's a year-long training, and there was 3 different weeks where we were in a room with Jack Canfield.
Okay.
A woman named Lisa Nichols spoke, and one of the things that she did was she told us her story. And she had us laughing, she had us crying, she had us laughing, she had us crying. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, she said, I shared my story because I want you to know your story matters. And in that moment, it's like the sky parted and God struck me with a bolt of lightning. Because one of the things we haven't talked about, and we don't need to, but I'll just give you a brief overview. So as a child, I was badly abused, physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually, badly abused. And oddly enough, as fate would have it, prior conversation, at the hands of 3 women. Wow. And so I realized in that moment that all my experiences in my childhood, the Marines, starting a business from scratch, buying companies, starting other companies from scratch, selling companies, I realized it all had a purpose.
Yeah. And
in that moment, the light went off, and I realized I want to go help other people, because for me, so because of my childhood, I went through a whole period of sex, drugs, alcohol, all kinds of stuff to kill the pain. And so whether it's people's personal issues or their business issues, I don't want them to lose 10, 15, 20, 30 years or their lifetime because they think there's not a way out. And so to your point, I've learned a lot about how to let go of emotional baggage and how to really just assess what's going on and how you can resolve it.
You're an incredible person here, Louie. The more I learn about you, and this is why I love doing these podcasts, is I learn so much about the people I'm interviewing. I learn about their life, and I'm super appreciative of the value or level that you share, right? You're not afraid to share who you are and what your experiences are and what formed you into being the person you are. So you then got struck by this bolt of lightning and you say to yourself, I've got a story to share. What's the next step? What does Louie do next that gets this ball rolling in the leadership world?
Well, so what happened was we had to do homework. So we had to go back home and we had to do a keynote speech, and we had to do at least a half-day seminar, even if it was for your family and friends. So I had a very dear friend of mine, a realtor. She put 50 business owners in a room. Okay. And I did my first keynote speech. And I had Jack Canfield's book, The Success Principles. Yeah. And that's what and at the end of it, so I tell people I never get nervous. I get excited. Sure. And I had the sensation from playing the guitar. I've had nights when I've played the guitar, and at the end of the night, people come up to me and say, man, you were awesome. And I tell them, it wasn't me, it came through me. The music that I play, I couldn't repeat it, right? It came through me. Sure. That's one of the things that happens when I speak. And so that first keynote speech, people came up to me like I was a celebrity. They wanted my autograph. I didn't write the book. Now I'm autographing his books, that I'm selling his books. And when we all have these gifts, speaking is one of my gifts. It doesn't make me more special than you or less special than you. It's just my gift. You have your gifts, right? Everybody has their gifts. And when you're in alignment with those gifts, it's easy. This is easy. Your work for you is easy because you're living in your gift. It's what you came here to do. And that's what I tell people. We all came in with a GPS, right? If you're unhappy, then you're off course. Right. If you're happy, you're on course. And so speaking for me it's in leadership, I'm on, and oddly enough, my entire life, I always would end up at the front being in charge or leading. Mm-hmm. Right? Because I've always had, to your point about a Steve Jobs, I'm the big picture guy. I can see the vision, right? I can see that, like this guy I was telling you about, I can see what he's capable of in 5 to 10 years. I can see it clear as I'm looking at you. And so I just realized it was my gift. And I had that feeling. And it happens every time it's been happening this whole conversation with you. It's just coming through me. It's not really from me. It's coming through me. And when you open yourself up to that goodness, the love, the compassion, the understanding, the forgiveness, that's when all these miracles happen. That's, incredibly powerful statements there. Because passion, people underrate that. But doing something you love, right? Find something you love, turn it into a job, and you'll never feel like you work a day in your life. And like you said, this is kind of flowing through you. I'm a big reader. I love Steven Kotler. He does a lot of research in peak performance and people being in the zone, right? And they've kind of dialed in. There is some biophysics that happen with that, right? And up in your brain, the changes that happen when you're actually doing something and you're in the zone and everything feels right? You can't make a mistake. You're on point. I applaud people living their lives in that state, because not a lot of people get to that point because they ignore the signs. They just ignore those road signs along the journey, and they don't take those right turns. And then when they do get to a point realizing it's off, the fear factor, once again, keeps them from adjusting course. Mm-hmm. And a big part of that is surrender, right? One of the things that owners or employers have this great illusion that they're going to change somebody.
Right.
Never happening, right? And we've been talking a lot about love and compassion. That doesn't mean you don't let people go.
Right.
You know, they might not be a good fit.
Absolutely.
You know, I think it was Good to Great. Who wrote the book Good to Great?
I know the book. I've read it.
But he talks about the right people on the bus in the right seat, right?
Right.
And my point to this is that not everybody may fit for your bus.
Right.
But the thing that is there it is. Yeah. And so when you can surrender to realizing that you don't have control over any of that stuff, it makes it really powerful to kind of get in that flow, right? And just let it be what it's going to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, people in the right seats, you know, on the bus are critical. I'm a big fan of slow to hire, fast to fire.
Right.
I think I need people. I just hire without using the right assessment tools, because there's a lot of great tools out there nowadays to do that. Even if you're not like emotionally EQ, like certified, or EQ in tune, I would say.
Right.
So I encourage people to really look at their hiring process relative to that, because I think that's a key point, right? You're building a team. Toxic people coming in, or people who don't fit well, that tends to poison that pool a little bit and can really affect your performance. So,
and I would add to that, I think that you understated that. I at one point I was like an area director over in an organization where I would go into these different chapters. It was for B&I.
Okay.
And when I was doing that, I never realized before that how toxic and corrupt one person can be. One person can suck down an entire organization. Yeah. And here's a couple questions I'll share with you that you can share with your listeners. And that is 2 questions I love to ask in the interview process is, what's the last book you've read? And what are you doing philanthropically? Who are you helping?
Yeah.
If they can't answer both those questions, I'm not hiring them.
That's great. I use the book one. So I think we're aligned on that one. That's the first time. I'm glad you brought that up, because that speaks volumes about a person. I mean, what are you doing to donate your time or volunteer and help a cause that's outside of yourself? Yeah.
And so I'm going to use you as an example. I can tell you one of the reasons why I love you, and I've already connected you to her, is because in our first conversation, you're talking about these toys you're making and donating for kids with autism, right? Well, a dear friend of mine has a sister with autism who's written a book. And so I connected you guys, but right away I knew your heart. Once I know somebody's heart, I'll pour into you till I've got nothing left, because I know you're coming from your heart. And again, that's what I said before. I didn't do any of that to get anything from you. I did that because at some point, that's how life works. It's going to come back to me from somewhere else.
You got it. Absolutely. And I'm totally on board with you on that, Louie. I appreciate the connection to Kayleen. I mean, her story is incredible. I mean, yeah, the honesty of it is incredible too. I really enjoyed meeting her and talking to her. And yes, I mean, I agree with you on all counts. We're in violent agreement.
and let me say, so now that she comes up and we're talking about leadership. So when we were in this B&I thing, I was a support director and she was the area director above me. I learned more from that woman about 21st century leadership than anybody in the Marines. And that's the power. But I had to check my door at the ego and not be I used to have a saying. So I was a door gunner and crew chief on helicopters. Yeah. And we used to say we could withstand pressures that would kill the common man. I'm a Marine aviator. We could withstand pressures that would kill the common man.
Absolutely.
I had to check that stuff at the door because, and I learned and grew so much as a leader under her because she was busy growing me up as a leader. But if I'd have come in with that ego stuff, I never gained all that wisdom and knowledge and love from her.
You would have missed all of it. Yeah. And I will include Kayleen's information and the links to her book at the end of the podcast as well, because that is an incredible story. And I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Talking philanthropy, I can't even say it, volunteering and philanthropy, right?
Yes.
You have mentioned before, you do a lot of different things that you donate your time and you donate resources. Can you give us a picture of just some of the top ones that you're active with?
Sure. So there's a thing called Home of the Sparrow. So I go in and I talk to abused women and children.
Okay.
Same thing. I want them to understand that they have choices and there's a better way. So it's a powerful thing for me. I think that my big dream I'll share with you and my audience is to build an organization that reaches around the world to help abused and sick children become healthy, productive, and loving adults. So I speak to schools and non-for-profits at no charge. To give you an example, I went into the Leukemia Research Foundation and did a full day of training for them at no charge.
Okay.
I also, when a corporation hires me, if it's in alignment, I always give them a free keynote. So for example, if you were to hire me and I came in and did a keynote for you, I tell you one of the deals is I'm going to do a free keynote for your philanthropic endeavor. So who's somebody that you love or you support, if it's Make-A-Wish, if it's the Cancer Society, whatever it might be, I give that for free. I think that it's powerful for me. I'd like to share a story with you. So I love high schools. I was speaking to about 1,100 high school kids a couple years back.
Okay.
And I was talking to them about affirmations and they have the choice to think what they want to think and think positive thoughts and those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
And one of the affirmations I taught them was, I like myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end, the whole place, like I said, 1,100 kids, and I take music into it, right? So I use my guitar. It's a great way to express and show people some things.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of it, this young boy, and I'm going to guess he was a freshman, skinny little boy, reminded me of myself as a freshman, skinny, shy, unsure. He walks up to me. He's got tears in his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, today was the first day somebody told me they liked me. I walked over to him and I hugged him. And I whispered in his ear, don't let today be the last day somebody tells you they like you. And I think everything happens for a reason. And in that moment, God humbled me because you want to impact all of them. Right. And on the drive home, I just contemplated, I impacted that one boy. And if that's all I did, if that's all I did with my whole life, it was all worth it for that one boy that now has that thought that he's worthy and deserving and likable and he likes himself.
You have such a huge heart, Louie. I thank you. Thank you for doing the things you do. They're meaningful. They contribute. And if more people are doing this type of activity, I think you'd see a different world out there entirely.
Well, and I think that we just got to stay the course, right, Jared? People like you and I just got to keep doing the little things, because I call it the downstream.
Yep.
We don't ever know, we don't know how far this is going to go, this conversation. Right. And we're not supposed to, because if we did, we probably couldn't get our big ego heads out the door after that, right? Right. But I think our job is every day is to put positive stuff in the stream and just let God do the rest. It's going to be whatever it's supposed to be, right? That's what I was talking. Surrender. Just let it put good out there and let it go do whatever it's supposed to do, right? Plant the seeds and water it and walk away. It's going to grow and sprout and it's going to bear fruit.
I get a lot of questions from people like, oh, why do you do the podcast? Are you getting money from it and everything? No, we don't get 1 cent from this. My goal is to help entrepreneurs and small business owners, right? Give them tools, right? Because I believe they're the backbone of the economy, which they are. I mean, people don't realize how much those businesses result in employment, economic recovery. They're going to be the drivers of this stuff. So having this conversation with people like you and getting it out there, like you said, into the ether where people can sit and listen and learn a few things, or even if they don't learn something, but they maybe take a look at their life in a little bit different perspective, and to the point of leadership, maybe change themselves as a leader a little bit more to be more effective, and it helps in that way. It's all worthwhile. I mean, this is why we do these things, and that's why I love talking to you, Louie, because we are so aligned and such kindred spirits in this space.
Well, and I agree. And that's why, if you remember, that's why right away I said, hey, I want to get you on the Leader Next Door series, right? And I interviewed you because I think that there's this illusion that like a Bill Gates or a Steve Jobs or these people that have done things are different, or they have something that we don't have, and that's not true. And there's people like you and I who are out here every day, and we don't do it to be on the front page of the newspaper or to be all over what's that People magazine or I don't watch TV anymore, so I've lost track of all that stuff. But you know what you and I mean. Yeah. And we don't do it for that. We do it because that boy's heart that has been touched, they can't take that back. You can't erase that, right? And so people can learn from people like I've learned from you. You've learned from me. People that are listening are going to learn from us and from each other. And that's where we can have an impact. You know, it's funny because people think that to change the world, it's this big grandiose thing that if you don't come up with like Post-it notes or a computer like Bill Gates or what, you're not doing. No, you know how you change the world? You hug somebody today. You get somebody to smile today. You appreciate somebody today. That's how you change the world.
You've heard of the butterfly effect, right?
I have.
Yeah, and I liken that back. I remember back. I took a class in college one time, and they presented a very interesting thesis or posit. Right? They said when you lift your little finger and you just do this, you don't realize it, but you've just moved every single molecule in the universe. Because just doing this and moving the molecules around your finger has a ripple effect. Just like when you throw that pebble in the pond and the rings kind of work their way out. Or even the butterfly effect. The butterfly flaps its wings, it's moving everything within the universe. We can make big changes doing very small things. And people need to realize that it's extremely powerful.
I agree with you. So one of the things I start when I do a presentation is people think, well, you're pretty egotistical. You're the gifted leader. And I tell them, I ask this question. By a show of hands, who in the room's a leader? And usually about 75, 80% of the room will put their hand up. I said, if you don't have your hand up, put your hand up. I said, because I don't care who you are, you're a leader. Somewhere in the world, somebody's watching you and how you do something. Even if it's just how you pump gas at the gas station, somebody's watching you. So you're leading people, whether you're aware of it or not. The next thing I ask is, I said, how many of you have had a positive impact in somebody else's life? The entire room puts their hand eagerly now. They're all jumping up, right? I said, guess what? That makes you a gifted leader.
It's really them. It's not about you, not Louie Sharp. They are the gifted leader. You're pointing that out to them. And so what's the reaction to that?
Well, you can see, so the energy in the room changes because they realize it empowers people. Like I said before, I was on a call yesterday and this woman ran the meeting. And now long history, she knows me, blah, 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 blah. And she was running the meeting because the president was absent.
Sure.
And she was and so at the end of the meeting, I said, hey, you did a great job. And she said this, and then she said, coming from you, that really means a lot. And I say that not to be egotistical, but to realize the impact we can have on other people's lives. Because I poured into her with something that was, and she felt it, right? Mm-hmm. And she knew it was the truth. Very powerful. Well, the whole room, you can pour into a whole room full of people. That's what I do right off. I've got this thing. We'll have to get together. I'd love for you to see me speak, but I've got this thing I do at the start, and I get everybody to laugh. Right off the bat, I get everybody to laugh. Because happy people are just happier and easier to speak with, communicate with, and get them to learn something. But after I get them to laugh, I get them to understand that they're a gifted leader. Mm-hmm. And now they're almost like a sponge because okay, what can I learn from him to be even a better gifted leader?
Right.
Because I'm not the gifted leader, you're the gifted leader. And that's why once you turn away from this stuff called ego and criticism and fear and hate and revenge and all that crap, now you blossom into who you came here to be.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I love that. I love that cadence that you do to change that state, right? And because anybody who's been into personal development and stuff, they know it's all about your state of mind, body, physiology. If you're in a bad state, there's things you can do to change it, and you've got some really good prompts for that.
Yeah, and it's funny because I even got some magic. I've learned magic. I never who would ever thought, right? But I love magic too, and I never thought I could do magic. But again, that master class I mentioned earlier, I learned about the lady that built spandex. Great business stuff in there and leadership. Yep. But there's Penn and Teller on there, and they teach you how to do some magic tricks. And they're simple magic tricks. But when you do them, and the audience is like, wow. and again, it just breaks what the expectation is and realize, hey, we're here to have some fun, right? We're here to learn. We're here to accomplish some things. And that's the other thing I do is I've always made fun part of it. Humor or fun somewhere, right?
Right.
And in the workplace, it's very powerful.
Last thing I want to touch on before we sign off is you're becoming an author, right? You've been an author. You've got The Gifted Leader. You've got a couple other books out there. You have one you're writing now called Leadership and Love. That process, how did you get into that? And was it kind of, a little bit of a fear point before you jumped off and got into it? And, what are some of the things you find a little more difficult about the process, and what do you love about it?
So I love your questions. You ask great questions. I mean that sincerely. You just ask such great questions because I think they're really important for people to hear. Sure. So I tell people, I believe everybody has two books in them, their life story and what they know about what they do. Everybody could write two books. Now, whether you want to or not, it's a whole different conversation, but everybody has two books in them. What happened for me was, like I said, I was out doing these presentations and I needed a PowerPoint and I didn't know how to build a PowerPoint. Now, this decades ago at this point.
Sure.
And so a friend of mine had their son, and he came in and built a PowerPoint for me. And he came back to me after he was done with it, and he said, do you know that this is an outline for a book? No, never occurred to me, never thought about it.
Yeah.
That was the spark. And so then what I did was I wrote that book. I blocked an hour on Sunday morning that I would write for an hour.
Okay.
And sometimes writing for that hour was like pulling teeth.
Yep.
And sometimes I'd look up and it was 3 or 4 hours later.
Sure.
And so, and I didn't realize my biggest challenge is because I learned so much and everything's connected, right? So, excuse me, whatever I've learned about emotional intelligence is connected to your physical health and well-being, which is also connected to your mental intelligence and your mental health. And it all goes on and on, right?
Yeah.
And so the biggest challenge for me is figuring out what to leave out. Because I could write like volumes of stuff, right? Once I get going, okay, Louie, stay on task. What's the topic? What's the main thing you want them to go away with? And so that's the biggest challenge. But we have so much information, and I'll share this with you and your audience because I think it's critical. Remember what I said when she said my story mattered?
Right.
Well, everybody listening, their story matters.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter what they've been through. And my life's journey hasn't been harder or easier than yours. It's just been my journey, just like yours has been your journey. But it's given us a wealth of stories to tell, of examples of how you can overcome or solve things. And so when you look back on all that, you think, my God, what a blessing. It's all of it. All of it was a blessing. All of it had a purpose.
Absolutely. You have such an incredible story, Louie. I love these conversations. Last question I'll ask you. You mentioned physiology, and I am in total agreement. Mind, body, it's all connected, and you mentioned about Coca-Cola earlier, about pouring crap in your body. I totally agree with that. I don't do soda. What is your routine to keep yourself in physical health? Do you have a morning routine?
Yes, I've got a pretty big morning routine, and so I get up in the morning, and so I can walk through it because I did it this morning. So I get up in the morning, And the first thing I do is I sit down with 2 journals. The first thing is my gratitude journal. And the second thing is my, I call it my Holy Spirit journal. So if I have a question, I'll ask, or, challenge that I get faced that day, I'll just ask. And then I let guidance, I just close my eyes and get still. And then I just start writing.
Okay.
And I tell people the answers that you're looking for are in you. You just have to, prayer is, and God for me is not some white-haired guy that's angry and going to send me to hell. It's really a spiritual, it's the best word I can come up with, light and love, right?
Sure.
But so I communicate with my inner wisdom. Mm-hmm. And then the next thing I do is I read for 20 minutes in something that I want to learn. I'm reading for 20 minutes.
Okay.
Then I meditate. And then I do some yoga.
Okay.
And then the first thing I put into my body is I'm a survivor of a massive heart attack that would have killed people that weren't in the shape I was in, and also a survivor of quadruple open heart surgery. And wow. This year I'm on pace to run a triathlon again. And so first thing I do is I put in a spoonful of olive oil, and I drink a glass of water. And then I take a shower, get ready for in there. I also, after my journaling, I read my affirmation cards. Okay. And I have a room where this is all set up for me. So I'm not wandering around. This goes, at this point, it's all a habit, and it all goes down pretty quick.
How long have you been doing this cadence of things in the morning?
Well, so it's years, but what I like to share with people is, I just did one at a time, right? Started reading for 20 minutes a day. And then I added my gratitude journal. And then I added meditation. And then as I learned things, I would add them. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't, it's not an overnight. And I tell people start slow. You don't want to overwhelm yourself. It's the journey, it's not a race, right?
It's not about the destination. It's about the journey, right?
Right. And so then I always make sure I eat a healthy meal. There's 3 things your body needs in the morning. It needs water, it needs movement, and it needs protein. And so I do yoga as for stretching and flexibility and balance.
Yep.
I've found that yoga is a great balance to my exercise routine, which I do at the end of the day, sure. Whether it's something aerobic or strength training. Mm-hmm. So that's my morning routine. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I used to do the gratitude journal. You're reminding me I got to get back to that. That is a powerful thing. I agree.
Yeah.
Louie, this conversation has been super, super informative. And I really hope people take the time to really listen to this thing in its entirety. And I know you and I could probably talk for another 2 to 3 hours easily on this.
Yep.
Before we sign off, though, I wanted to give you an opportunity based on the things you do, the philanthropy you do and like that. Do you have any asks for the people listening? People listening, how can they help Louie Sharp and the Gifted Leader?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that opportunity. So there's a couple things they can do. The easiest way to get a hold of me, they can just go to louiesharp.com. That'll lead you to all kinds of ways to get in touch with me. But louiesharp.com. I would have a couple asks. The first one on the business side is connect me to people that are event planners and those kinds of things. If they're in associations, obviously my speaking business took a severe dive last year. Mm-hmm. It really was like somebody turned off the faucet because nobody was having live events. Right. So if they know anybody, I'd love that introduction or the connection. Okay. And the other thing is I would, if they know somebody in a nonprofit or a school, to connect me for that as well. I'm really passionate about helping kids early on learn the things that you and I both have already are living and have really incorporated into our lives. So if they know somebody in a school district that can get me in front of like the teachers, I've spoken to teachers in a school district before. I've gone in and talked to the kids on bullying and affirmations and all kinds of stuff like that. So if there's anybody out there that can connect me to, and again, a nonprofit that's looking for some training for their team, leadership, team building, time management, goals, vision, that kind of stuff, I can help them with any of those kinds of things as well.
Those are all very, very great asks. And, I do have a nonprofit I'm going to connect you with after this. So, Louie, your story is incredible. Your energy is incredible. I love your energy. I appreciate you as a person and what you bring to the table and how you're trying to change people in little increments. And your honesty and sincerity is really admirable. I definitely, you're a unique person. Anybody who wants a really honest, great speaking engagement, contact Louie. He's your guy. You can find 2 of his books out there. Are they on Amazon or?
Yep, they're both on Amazon. Yeah.
Okay, so Louie's got 2 books on Amazon. If you want to read some of his work, he's in process on the 3rd there, and he also has Louie Sharp Auto Body. So Sharp Auto Body is a great resource if you need work on your car. So Louie, thank you again, and I really wish you all the best, and we will be talking soon.
It truly was my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jared.
Thank you for joining us today and listening to our podcast. If you'd like to reach out to Louie for more info, his emails are below, or you can reach out to him on LinkedIn or one of his websites. Links to other topics that were discussed during the podcast are below. If you want to recommend somebody to appear on the podcast as a guest, please email us at info@opsqc.com. If you're interested in sponsoring a podcast, please reach out to us at the same email. We'd love to have your support.